Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Yahya Van Roy. I am an elementary principal at an Islamic school, and I also serve as the Director of Community Development for the Islamic Schools League of America. Today, I want to talk to you about a serious and growing issue in our Muslim community. One of my areas of focus is critical issues facing Muslim youth. An issue of top concern right now is addiction. So when we think about addiction, we often think of substance abuse, which is certainly a part of the problem. So looking at drugs and alcohol, but addiction can be understood on a much wider breadth. And for this, we can turn to the work of the addiction expert, Dr. Gabor Mate. Dr. Gabor defines addiction as any behavior in which a craving is manifested that leads to some momentary relief or pleasure, followed by suffering or pain, and then finally, despite that, an inability to stop or impaired control. So basically we have craving, relief or pleasure, suffering, and impaired control. That's the cycle. Now that can include almost any human behavior. So beyond just substance abuse, we have gaming addiction, we have pornography, we have social media addictions, eating addictions. Almost any imaginable human behavior can become an unhealthy addiction. Now, what causes addiction? If we look at this at a deep level, we can see that addiction often traces back to a wound from early childhood. It often results from some form of suffering in which whatever behavior is helping to relieve that pain. So Dr. Gabor says the question is not what is the addiction or how long has the addiction been happening, but why the pain? So that's where we need to start. And the research shows that oftentimes it happens in early childhood. So something has happened in the home, some type of trauma. And the trauma is not necessarily trauma with a capital T. Sometimes it's just being ignored repeatedly can lead to addiction. So some signs to be aware of. Isolation, if your son or daughter is starting to isolate more, if they've shown a lack of interest in things that often used to produce joy and pleasure, if they stop talking to you or stopped interacting with friends. Perhaps you've observed changes in appetite, depression, sadness. All of these things are signs that something is likely going on. Doesn't necessarily mean an active addiction, but these are signs to be aware of. So what can we do as parents? Parents are the first line of defense. And we have to have relationships with our kids. We have to know who their friends are. We have to know what they're watching, what they're doing. This here is an incredible tool, but it's also, as a brother put it, a loaded gun if we're not careful, because this is access to everything in the world right now. So we have to be very careful with our technology and teach our children to use it responsibly. In the Muslim community, there is a big stigma around addiction. And if we look to some research that was published last year by the ISPU, 37% of people that responded in the Muslim community knew someone in the Muslim community with an active or at one time active addiction. That goes to show this is an issue we need to address. But due to that stigma, oftentimes it goes undiscussed and it's left under the rug. So what's out there for support and resources? Alhamdulillah, we have a lot of resources now, both through our masjids, through our mental health centers, and in our school communities as well. So we need to use those resources. We need to start discussing this issue and start addressing it. And one particular organization and group I want to mention for people in active addiction that you may know of, this is a resource from a group called Millati Islam. And Mulati Islami is a 12-step program from an Islamic perspective. It's an Islamic treatment for addiction. And what Millati Islami has done is they've taken 12-step programs from AA and NA, and whereas NA came about to be non-specific about substance, Millati Islami came about to be specific about spiritual principles. So this is a group all over the US currently and international, and they've published some literature here. This is a great resource for anyone working in the field of addiction or anyone interested in the topic to be aware of. So I pray that Allah keeps us holding fast to His rope, which is the only sure hold in this time that we're in of increasing fitna. May He make it easy for us. May He strengthen our families and may He guide us on the straight path and grant us success in this life and the next, inshallah.